Explain the role of Windows Server. Windows OS Server acts as a centralized computer that provides specific functions and predetermined rules for computers, users, and components connected to a network. What is Windows Domain? Windows Domain provides access to user accounts, computers, printers, and security features as part of database controlled by a domain controller. What is a firewall? Firewall is a filter between two or multiple computer sources. It blocks any incoming or outgoing traffic. Firewalls can be in software or hardware forms. What is TCP/IP? Can you explain the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? What is DNS and which port does it use? DNS stands for Domain Name System and it's mostly used to interpret domain names into numeric IP address. For example, domain name cosmicnovo.com, its IP address is 130.211.160.109. DNS uses port 53 TCP or UDP. How many queries does DNS perform and which ones? DNS can perform two types of queries, iterative and recursive. What is Active Directory? A service of Windows Server OS, Active Directory is used for user and computer authentication within a domain. It can also enforce security policies with use of GPOs, which can also be used to push software installs across domain. Active Directory database is located where? Database is under the file name ntfs and it is located in the %system root %\ntds folder of the server. What is a lingering object? If an object is deleted from Active Directory while domain controller is offline, it can create a lingering object. When object is deleted from Active Directory, a tombstone is created which then has to be replicated by domain controller before it expires. What is RAID? Which commands would you use in CMD to test network connectivity? To test network connectivity, ping, /cert or ipconfig commands can be used. How do you back up Active Directory? Active Directory can be backed up by using backup tool that comes with 2003 server. With 2008 server, a command prompt is used to perform backup. Type admin start systems data backup target. You can also perform a full server backup through Server Manager. Do you know what garbage collection is? Garbage collection is a process designed to free space inside Active Directory. This is performed by default every 12 hours. Do you know what sizeful folder is? System volume folder is a directory that houses a copy of domain files found on a local hard drive within domain controller. This data is shared for purpose of replication across domain. For example, user logon scripts and Windows group policy. Explain what group policy is. Can you name different types of email servers and ports used? You can have two types of email servers: incoming mail server, outgoing mail server. What is the difference between a forest and a domain? A domain is a logic-based group of computers, users, and devices within Active Directory. A tree is a collection of domains. In case there are multiple trees formed, a forest is created. Do you know what virtual machine is? Virtual machine is an emulation version of operating system. For example, you can have multiple copies of Windows running on a single computer. What is a proxy or proxy server? Proxy deals with filtering network traffic in a sense of preventing access to certain websites and can even monitor user web activity. It can block certain websites from being accessed, but it can also act as a measure of hiding the true origin at point of access. Can you explain what UDP is? What is the loopback IP address? The loopback IP address is 127.0.0.1. As part of troubleshooting network connections issues, it is used to test network interface card for functionality. If you ping this IP address and it completes successfully, it means your hardware is okay. What is DHCP? What is FTP and port used? FTP is a file transfer protocol used to transfer large files between computers with built-in ability to pause transfer of data. Ports used by FTP are 20 and 21. What is SSH and port used? What is the maximum length of UTP cable allowed? The maximum length of UTP is 90 to 100 meters for a single segment connection. If you have a switch or a repeater, it can compensate for this limitation. What are the layers of OSI model and how many? There are 7 layers of OSI model: physical layer, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, and application. What is the job of network layer? Network layer deals with routing, switching, and transmitting of data from one point to another, but this layer is also responsible for error handling and packet sequencing. Which types of network cables are used in networking? Cat5 runs at 100 megabytes per second maximum, Cat5e can run up to 1 gigabyte per second, and Cat6 can run up to 10 Gbps. Speeds are rated at 100 meters maximum distance. What is a subnet mask? A subnet mask holds the information about network and hosts addresses under a subnet. In order for TCP/IP protocol to figure out this information, it looks at the 32-bit subnet mask number. Typical example is 255.255.255.0. Can you tell me the difference between a workgroup and a domain? With a workgroup, you have a collection of systems that are connected to the same network but have their own set of rules and permissions set at local level. With a domain, you have a group of systems that are bound by the rules of a domain controller. Can you give an example of DNS issue? If the host cannot be reached by its name over the network but can be reached using an IP address, indicates a problem with DNS. How would you analyze connection between a local host and a server? A tracer command is used to accomplish this test. Traceroute can provide detailed path information taken through switches, servers, computers in reaching final destination. What is ipconfig command used for? Ipconfig command is used to determine TCP/IP settings, DHCP configuration, DNS, default gateway, and subnet mask. It can also be used to change local DHCP settings, for example ipconfig/release and /renew. What is VPN? A virtual private network allows users to create a secure connection over public networks such as Internet. This is commonly used by mobile workers in order to access companies' network from a remote location. What is a network switch? A network switch is used to create or control a network at physical layer in which multiple devices are connected and share data. This is accomplished by receiving, processing, and forwarding of data in form of data packets. You receive a trouble ticket that the monitor is not working. What is the first thing you should check? Check the cables. Make sure everything is plugged in and make sure the monitor is receiving power. If it's still not working, then it mostly likely be the cable. What is safe mode? How do you get to it and what is it used for? While the computer is booting up, press and hold F8 and click on Safe Mode. Troubleshoot issues with hardware like hard drives. Safe Mode also allows to remove any viruses. Some files will be hidden unless I am logged into Safe Mode. What is an IP address and how do I find it? The address is assigned to the computer on the network. In order to find the IP address through the command line prompt, ipconfig/all. What is a default gateway? A path for the computer to access other networks which you can have access by the ipconfig/all. What is Active Directory? What is a domain? A computer network that has user accounts, computer printers and group policies. All the computers on the network are connected to the domain and it's centralized to each of those components. You receive a trouble ticket that states, "My printer is not working properly. It prints out a weird pattern on the paper. Please assist." Reinstall a proper printer driver in order to resolve this printing issue. What are some commonly used LAN cables? Capacity Cat5-100 Mbps Cat5e-1 Gbps Cat6-1/10 Gbps Cat6 at 10 Gbps. What is the blue screen of death? What is DHCP? It is used to allocate IP addresses for every computer that is connected to the network. What is DNS? What is VPN? Secure to the business's network. What is a ping command and its use? Test the connection between 2 points in the network. What is a group policy? What is a PST file? How would you change folder permissions? What is the difference between a switch and a hub? How would you recover data from a virus-infected computer? What would you consider when describing something technical to a non-technical person? How many golf balls can you fit into a school bus? Ask us to think on your feet logically. The volume of the golf ball is the volume of the bus minus 20% of the seats. Tell me how future technology advances might impact your job. Assessing your understanding of what is happening in your industry, it also assessing your reaction to it. How do you handle tight deadlines whilst working on technical-based projects? I assess if there are any difficulties in accomplishing it and 2 would allocate additional time outside of normal working hours to get the project finished just in case we run into difficulties. How do your technical knowledge up to date? How many street lights are there in this country? Population: how many houses per street light? How many people per house? What is Amazon AWS? How would you solve a slow network speed? A user complains that their system is running very slow. How would you solve this problem? How does Google Maps work? What is Amazon S3 and how it is connected to AWS? When you encounter bugs and issues, what problem-solving process do you use? What happens when a user enters a URL in a browser and then clicks enter? What are your salary expectations in this tech role? Describe a situation where you had an angry client or user. Patient and willing to listen no matter how angry they are. Empathize with the client. A user is finding it difficult to configure a printer on their computer. How can you help them? How will you make sure that a system is not infected with a virus? What is PTR? What is a default gateway? What is an IP address and how to find it? IP address is a number assigned to your computer to identify its location on a network, meaning that DHCP server will assign a number to each computer connected to a network as part of identification. You can find your IP address by using command prompt. What is safe mode? How do you get to it, and what is it used for? When logging into the computer, the user is only able to log into a temporary profile. User is unable to open encrypted emails. Install 7-zip to extract file required to log in to de-encrypt, then able to download the file. User is only able to access sites. All other sites are providing an access denied error. May require to install and certificate the website is fully blocked. Network issue. User is unable to log into a computer. The computer is not on, the account is locked out, the password is changed, the computer fell off the domain. A user is unable to complete a training via ADLS. Driver problem, computer management, delete cookies in cache web browser. A user calls in and is unable to send/receive emails. Internet in the computer account locked out. Restart the computer, the inbox is full. Restart the Outlook profile. Greater than test with the user. Greater than apologize for doing things. What is a phishing attack? What is the difference between serial and parallel ports? A serial port transmits data 1 bit at a time in serial order, while a parallel port transmits 8 bits at a time. Explain cookies. Cookies are small text files used to track a user's movement on a website. They are used to save the user's progress, remember their credentials, preferences, and other data items. Cookies are stored on the user's computer. What is Bootini and when do you use it? Bootini is an initialization file usually found on older Windows NT, XP, and 2000. This file contains boot options for computers with BIOS firmware. It is located in the root directory of the primary hard disk drive partition. What is a cross cable? A cross cable is used to connect two devices of the same type. It is usually used when we need to connect two devices in the absence of an intermediary device, such as a switch. What is IMAP? IMAP is an email protocol. IMAP stands for Internet Message Access Protocol. It manages emails directly on the email server instead of downloading them on the end-user device. All modern email clients and servers support IMAP. What is the difference between FAT32 and Ntfs? FAT stands for File Allocation Table. It's relatively older file system that stores data in chunks of 32 bits. Its file size is extremely limited. Ntfs stands for New Technology File System. It's a modern file system that supports large file sizes, recovery features, file permissions, and hard links. A user is unable to log in their computer even when they are typing their password correctly. How can you solve this problem? What is reverse DNS lookup and forward DNS lookup? Forward DNS lookup converts domain names to IP addresses, while reverse DNS lookup converts IP addresses to domain names. You talked about DNS earlier in the interview. Can you explain what is DNS? DNS translates domain names to IP addresses so that browsers can load internet and network resources for end users. What is the difference between incremental backup and differential backup? What is SCSI? SCSI stands for Small Computer System Interface. It's a type of fast parallel bus that is used to connect serial devices within the computer, including hard disks, scanners, CD-ROM, and tape drivers. What is DHCP? DHCP stands for Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. DHCP assigns unique IP addresses to hosts. We use DHCP to automate the process of IP address assignments so that we don't have to manually assign IP addresses to computers or devices in large networks. Okay, can you tell me in a bit more detail how DHCP works? How you can your backup Outlook emails? The best option is to use PST files to take Outlook backups. We can use the export option in Outlook to get a PST file for Outlook data. A user complains that their computer clock resets every time they restart their PC. How would you solve this problem? The most common cause of this problem is a faulty CMOS battery which provides power to complementary metal oxide semiconductor chip. This chip stores key information like data and time. Replacing the CMOS battery solves this problem. What is a PST file and why is it important? You are asked by the company CEO to make sure that no employee in the company is able to open Facebook. How will you implement this policy? How does a router work? What is the single most important factor that must be present in your work environment for you to be successful and happily employed? What happens behind the scenes when you type google.com in the browser and hit enter? How does a VPN work? A VPN builds a private network over a public network with extra encryption to connect users to the private network's resources. A VPN masks the original IP address, identity, and location of the originator of a web request. How do you get the MAC address for a specific NIC? We can also find it using ipconfig/all command. What is the purpose of a logical drive? What is a logical drive? A logical drive is a virtual storage unit that exists on a physical hard drive but acts as an independent storage drive. Access point works as a bridge forwarding communications between the wireless stations and the wired network, referred to as a distributed system. The access point will be joined to the network in much the same way as a host computer via a wall port and cabling to an Ethernet switch. What's the difference between a router and a switch? A router is responsible for moving data around a network of networks known Internet, while a switch forwards frames using hardware addresses within a single network segment. A router forwards packets around an internetwork using logical network and hosts. VLAN. Internet Protocol provides packet addressing and routing at the network layer. IP provides best effort delivery of an unreliable and connectionless nature. A packet might be lost, delivered out of sequence, duplicated, or delayed. Transmission Control Protocol guarantees orderly transmission of packets at the transport layer. TCP can identify and recover from lost or out-of-order packets. This is used by most TCP/IP application protocols, as failing to receive a packet or processing it incorrectly can cause serious data errors. User Datagram Protocol Application Protocol. There are numerous protocols used for network configuration, management, and services. Application protocols use a TCP or UDP port to connect the client and server. Network address translation. Most hosts on private networks are not configured with IP addresses that can communicate directly to the Internet. Instead, when clients on the local network connect via a router, the router converts the client's private IP address into a valid public address using network address translation. A virtual private network.